Welcome. My name is George Pearson and I run the How To Gurus channel here on YouTube. Most of the videos in my channel are short demonstrations of the different tools and techniques you'll find in various software programs. Right now I have several hundred of these quick videos available on YouTube. This video though is different. This is part of a new series of longer demonstrations that I'm doing to show you how to complete complex projects from start to finish using a variety of techniques and tools. All of the images I use in these projects are in the public domain, and I've included a link to the pictures in the video description in case you want to work along using the same images. Okay, let's move on to the project. In this Photoshop Elements special effect training, we're going to be looking at how to do this kind of fantasy lights effect in here, and this uses some special brush techniques. Now, to make this image, we'll be combining a couple of different pictures and then doing a lot of stuff to that. Notice we have a background image and some gradients and some colors in here, and we have our star effects, and we have our bird of prey here on top with a layer mask. So, several things happening to achieve this final effect. Alright, let's go ahead and we'll just get that out of the way, and we'll start off with our two basic pictures. Here's the bird of prey, and here is our background image. I'm going to zoom this up a little bit here. And we'll use this as our main image to work from. There we go, whole thing is on the page. Let's now take the bird of prey and pull him into the picture. Just like that, there we go. Now we're going to be doing a layer mask on this. Let's first just resize this a little bit. There's also a copyright down below, actually the website where this was taken from. All the pictures I'm using, of course, are public domain pictures, but there's also a little bit down there as well. We just need to remove that along with our layer mask at the same time. Easy to do. Now, I'm going to resize this. We'll just pull the image down a bit, kind of like that, and then just go just outside the corner and give it a rotation until you have a nice look for that bird, about where you want that to be, like that. Now on the layer mask, we're going to be making a selection around this bird and making a layer mask from that, and then cleaning up that layer mask a little bit. So we'll start off with, in this case, we're going to our magic wand here. And there are a few we can use. We can use a selection brush, a quick selection tool, refine selection brush tool. We'll do a quick selection. I'll just pull in here a little bit like that. And don't worry about that outside stuff. We're still inside this picture. And that pulls a basic selection for us of the overall image. Now if we zoom in, this is not going to be perfect. As you can see here, it's not perfect around the feathers. It's pretty good on most of the feathers, but not all of the feathers. So let's refine the edge of our selection. Go up here to Select and Refine Edge. Notice we have a circle with a plus sign in the middle. What you want to do is you want to click out where you want to have the selection remove the image and overlap the circle over the part that you want to keep. And then Photoshop will go in and re-examine that edge and clean the edge up. And it's very, very good at doing this. On this bird actually does a almost perfect job of this. So let's go around anywhere where that edge is not looking perfect. We'll do a little bit of cleanup with this. Most of this part is pretty good. Just little bits of stuff that aren't maybe exact. We can clean those up. If this doesn't work, we can go back in and modify the matte as well. We'll do that as a final step. So we get as close as we can with this tool and then do a little bit of final modification on the mask after the fact. Let's see how we do here. Yeah, it really doesn't want to grab that too much. Actually, that's better. but we still do better than that as well, manually. So again, just continue to go around and get this as close as possible. And we will have to do those feathers by hand, the ends, so they're too close in value to the background. But this is getting everything else for us. Okay, a little bit along the edges in there. And just about have that step finished. Along in these parts, this technique works very well. Now I can try to improve this a little bit by improving our contrast. You can see a bit of red showing in there. If we bring the contrast up, that can usually get rid of a lot of that. Kind of clean that up. Choose OK. There's the mask. Click on the Layer Mask tool. There's a layer mask now on that. Notice that that is actually backwards. It's the opposite of what we want. So let's just undo Layer Mask. Let's invert our selection. So inverse. And then Layer Mask. There we go. So there's the bird on top of that layer mask. We can now zoom along and see where it is having any problems. As I was saying, right down along the bottom of those feathers. So let's take a look at that layer mask. Click on the layer mask itself. Now, with the layer mask, white is show and black is hide. Now, the reason why it's white out here is because all of that area, there was no picture on there. It just made it automatically white. So let's just see if we can just fill that in. I'll grab the paint bucket first, see if we can do a quick fill. Let's make sure we're using black. There we go. And see what happens if we click out here. And it's not really doing anything for us. Let me make sure I have the right color on that. Yep, that's correct. Okay, let's go ahead and then we'll go to the paintbrush. My paintbrush is way too large. Okay, now with that paintbrush adjusted in size, and actually I'm going to, let's set this at a hard edge 19. I think that's going to work out pretty well. And notice if I'm on black, it hides. So let's reverse our color now to white. And then I can come in and I can paint back in, and let's just find where those feather edges are. So I'm going to first come along and just kind of paint in white, re-showing my feathers, and then I'll paint back in with black to remove the part that we no longer want. So there's a couple of steps on the mask. This is one of the nice things about using a mask, is that you can go back and forth on it and refine your edge. Okay, that's those feathers. Let's get these up here. So all I'm doing is I'm painting white onto the layer mask. You see the outline right there in light blue. And that is showing on the layer mask, and then where it's showing, I'm just kind of finding the edge of that. Alright, now let's reverse our colors. And I'll bring the size down. Let's bring it down to maybe a 5. It's real small here. Actually, it's a 9. That's okay. And color swatches, black. Now I'm still painting on the mask, and I can now just paint back in and come back in and paint out the part that I don't want. And there we go. So just manually cleaning up our mask. I'm not going to be real careful on this one. Just want you to see the technique. I'll go down to a real small brush, get those last little bits in there. So again, the whole trick here is that if you're working with a layer mask, black hides and white shows. And we'll just finish up around the bottom edges and then go back into a little fine tuning with a real small brush. Luckily, being a fantasy picture, if we're a little bit off on this, if I'm going a little bit too fast on this, it's okay. Now, if I was doing this one for a professional job, aside from this video training, of course, I would take more time and do a much more careful job of this. Maybe come in and do a selection and fill the selection very carefully with black. But I think painting it like this actually shows you how it works better. You get a better idea of how the masks work, which is part of what this particular video is about. Okay, just about got it. We'll do like that. And then I'll bring the brush size down even further, down to the 3. And then I can just come in and get these last little bits. A little bit of careful edge stuff. We'll be adding a glow to the outside of this as well, and that's going to change the look a little bit also. We're also darkening things down, so it's going to be looking just fine when it's all finished. This particular step, pretty much on anything you're doing, the selection and the masking step are the most time consuming. Everything else you'll do will go much faster than this one step. So if you have anything which has masking involved on it or selections involved, just figure to allow extra time for that particular step to go ahead and get all of that done, because it's a lot of detail work to do a really good job on that. Now in this I'm using a mouse, and that's why the brush is zigzagging a little bit. Mice tend to get kind of a zigzag effect. If I was working with my stylus, this would be a lot smoother. But since most people don't have tablets and styluses, I'm doing the technique with just a mouse like the average person has. Okay, so there's our nicely cleaned up mask. We can now zoom out. Looks good except for over here. Looks like we need to do some cleanup still over in here. A little bit of cleanup of this particular edge. So you get the idea in here about cleaning this up. Now, I'm not going to spend all your time just watching me clean up these edges here, so I'm going to, at this point, pause the video. I'll finish up the cleanup on the feathers. Once that's done, I'll bring the video back up again, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, there's the bird all nicely cleaned up. I spent about another 10 minutes and just kind of carefully went around and adjusted all of those edges on the mask. Make sure it's all nice and clean. Again, the nice thing about doing a mask like this, a layer mask like this, is that you can go back and work back and forth and adjust and modify as you need to until you get things exactly the way you want it. Alright, let's now work on the background a bit. We'll do a few things on the background. We'll start by darkening down the sky on this. So I'll create a new layer. Let's just bring it over a little bit. There we go. Let's do a new layer above that. We'll put a gradient on this. And then let's move over here and go to our gradient tool. Now in the gradients you have several gradients up here. The one we want is the foreground to transparent right there. And your foreground color should be set at black for this to work. And then with the gradient I'll come just above the picture, just off the picture. Hold the shift key down, pull straight down, and that gives me a black to clear gradient in the background. Now I want to blend this in to our picture. Just use it to darken down the sky. I don't really care about the dark parts. I want the light parts darkened down. So we're going to change the blending mode on this one layer to darker color right there. And that's going to help us then darken down the sky part of the image. Now with these blending modes you have all kinds of options. You have darken, you have normal, we have screen, So you can see different blending mode options will give you differing effects in here. And what I'm looking for is just one of these up here that helps to darken down the top of the image. And it's kind of a spooky effect up there. Also giving us a dark area in here to put our bright lights in. Okay, so that gives us that darker bit. Now let's add in some interesting coloration into the background. I'm going to be putting in a fill layer right here. Go up to Layer and New Fill Layer, Gradient. So our gradient fill layer. Now on this one we're going to be doing a dark purple, kind of a purple color to black. And let's take a look at some of our colors in here, see what we have, if anything was going to work out well for us. Nothing what I'm looking for. So let's go to our defaults. I'll grab this one and we're going to modify this gradient. Click on the gradient itself up here. You can then change the colorations of the gradient. Now this is going white to black at the top in there. So I want to reverse that. So click down here and we want to be going from a dark purple in here someplace, kind of a purplish color, and going to a black over here. Click on the color stop and let's come down to black. And that gives us a purple or a black to purple gradient, linear, and it's just straight up and down gradient on that. Now we want to blend this one into our background picture, so we'll be using an overlay this time. That kind of overlays that coloration on our picture, as you can see there. But it's also too much. So let's bring down the opacity a bit. We can just find just the right amount. And what that does is it gives us that kind of interesting purple coloration in there. Everything is staying nice and dark for the top part of our area here. We have our nice background. You can play around with these until you get just the effect that you want. I'm going to lighten up the background just a bit on this one, not too much, but a bit. There we go. So play around, make adjustments to get just that effect that you want. Okay, everything is looking good. We now can go back up here to the bird, and we're going to be putting a glow around our bird. So let's go up to Layer, Style Settings, and Glow. You want outer glow. See, there's that glowing effect. I'll be sticking with that purple color. Let's click on the color over here and let's go up here to our purples. And let's find kind of a nice dramatic purplish glow. That looks pretty good. And you can adjust the opacity to bring down the amount of that. Now just a bit in behind. I'll go a little more dramatic on it this time, but so a bit of opacity, this glow happening, giving us a purple glow around our bird shoes. Okay, and there's that. So all we have left now to do are those fancy star kind of sparkly things in the background. This is the real trick. Come down just below the bird here, make a new layer. This will be our star layer. There we are. Now on the stars, we'll be making these white, and this gets this bird out of the way. And let's take a little bit of explanation. We're going to be using a brush for this, and we're using a white color, so color swatches and white right there. And we'll look at our brushes. Now on these brushes, there are lots and lots of different brushes. As we go down our list here, we get some fancier brushes in here. All kinds of interesting, different brushes, including some special effects kind of brushes down lower. Now there are more brushes as well. We have assorted brushes, all kinds of strange things in here, as you can see. So having right there, this is a starburst large, and here's a starburst. We'll be using this one. So So it's assorted brushes and starburst. Now this is what it's going to look like. It just kind of paints it in as a straight line. I don't want to have that. So let's click on brush settings, and it brings up the brush setting in here. On this one I can bring up a fade amount, and I can bring in spacing and bring in scatter. And you see what I get is more of a kind of a scatter, kind of a randomness effect on that brush. That's what we want there. We can also adjust the roundness, and we can do a hue jitter, but we're working with white, so there's no hue jitter working on that. Just kind of play around with the scatter and with the spacing in here and a little bit of fade. And what that does is it gives us variation on these. Only thing we're not varying right now is the size, but we'll play around with that as well. Now, if I come in here and just click, you can see as I click, the brushes are kind of going different spots. And if I pull like that, it's actually coming in and giving me kind of randomness to those. So there's just a few of those. Let's bring our brush size up. I'll put it up to 100 pixels and get a few more in here. You can see as I pull it now, they're going in a random pattern. And it's that randomness that makes it look real nice. It doesn't look too contrived that way. Okay, there we go. There's just some random stars happening in there. Little star things. Now we want to put a glow onto these stars. So a glow onto our layer, little stars layer. And that's again layer and layer styles, style settings. And let's come down here to glow and outer glow. There's that outer glow effect. And you can choose how much of that glow you want, and you can choose what color you want to have on it. I'm going to do the same kind of purplish for the outer glow, like that, similar to the outline that we did. And let's go to an inner glow here, and let's give the inner glow a bit of an orange effect. And see if we can actually see that happening. Not really seeing it on this particular brush size, but you can usually do this and get a little bit of an orangish effect in there as well. But since it's not working this time, I'm not going to be worrying about that inner glow. So there you go. That brings in our stars. There's that kind of interesting star effect. Now, of course, the whole trick here to do this is that we use that specialty brush to give us these different stars and different size shapes and so forth. I'm going to show you that again. So the two main things to take away from this particular discussion, one is the masking up here. Great technique because it allows you to go back in and adjust and modify afterwards. Everything else is pretty straightforward. A little bit of blending mode stuff, such as the overlay blending mode for the purplish colors and the darker color blending mode for the gradient. But on the stars, the real trick of this whole discussion, let me just show you that again. That's using this specialty brush in here. It's assorted brushes. And there are lots of different brushes. Basic brushes, the assorted brushes. So I scroll next, there's all kinds of fun stuff. There's snowflakes, for instance, and calligraphic brushes, drop shadow brushes, dry media if you want to do some painting kind of techniques, special effects brushes. Here's flowers you can actually paint on. There's rubber ducks you can paint in. There's some weird special effects things. Square brushes if you need a square effect. Thick, heavy brushes. So all these different kinds of brushes that you can use. Some of these can be used for real nice special effects, and that's one of the things I like down in here is the starburst effects right in there. There's a couple different of these starburst effects, and then simply do it a couple of times and adjust your brush settings right there. That allows you to put in a fade or fade out amount on your brushes, and if you have a color brush, you can actually jitter the hue. It'll shift the color back and forth so you get different color effects. I left mine all as white. And then the scattering and the spacing gives you that kind of spaced or scattered effect as you paint in, just saving you a lot of time and effort. Instead of clicking each one of these individually, I can just kind of paint a stroke, and it gives me a random application of those different stars. So there you go. That's how to do this kind of fantasy light effect in here using one of these special brushes. Thank you for watching this special Photoshop photography project video. Don't forget to subscribe so that you will get first notice of new project videos in the future. Just click on this link right here where it says subscribe here. You can get all 12 project videos in this series along with 26 special videos demonstrating the tools and techniques that I used in these projects by clicking on this link right down here. And then thank you again for watching this training video.